Welcome to the latest edition of the OmniTalk Spotlight Series, the series that highlights the people, the companies, and the technologies that are shaping the future of retail. I'm your host, Chris Walton.
And I'm Ann Mazinga.
And today we are spotlighting AI in a conversation we are affectionately calling Everything Retailers Want to Know About AI, but are afraid to ask. And I'm pretty proud of that one.
I know you are. I can tell. But this is a safe space. Everybody, there's a lot going on when it comes to AI, especially within our retail industry. So this is time to ask those questions, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't be surprised if you and I both show our ignorance many times throughout this conversation. Yeah, 100%, 100%. So joining us today to share her considerable expertise on this subject, without further ado, is Amanda Saunders, the Senior Manager for Enterprise and Edge AI Product Marketing at NVIDIA. Amanda, welcome to OmniTalk, and I hope you will excuse what is likely going to be a lot of elementary questions from us for you, as we sheepishly try to put our egos aside and try not to show our ignorance at times talking about this hot topic of AI. So yes, welcome.
You know, I think as they say, there are no stupid questions. So I'm really excited to be here and excited to talk about this. It's a really hot topic, as you said, and it's moving fast. So we're all learning together and we're all, trying to figure out what this means for us.
Yeah, that's what they say. I don't know if I ever believe that, but that is what they say. Yes, yes.
Yes. And we appreciate your confidence in us, Amanda. And we have to ask, though, I think, tell us a little bit about your background and how did you kind of come into this position in your role at NVIDIA? Let's start there, just to kind of give us and the audience some context.
Absolutely. So I've been at, NVIDIA for 8 years now. So, a good amount of time, and really, learned about AI as the company itself progressed into this space. So I've worked across numerous different roles and looking at everything from graphics, which is a huge area for AI these days, and certainly for retailers, all the way into things like AI at the edge and how that's being deployed in stores and factories and warehouses. And now we're hitting the hot topic of generative AI, which blew up in the last, let's go 2 or 3 months, but has been something that companies have been looking at for 5+ years or so. So really spanned the gamut of AI topics within NVIDIA. And now I focus on, leading product marketing for a couple of our areas, particularly focused on large language models.
Got it. So we got a real expert here, Ann. That's a big takeaway here. There's a lot of
8 years of experience seeing this kind of come to life, really, I imagine.
Yeah, we've got the resume in front of us. All right, so I'm going to plead my ignorance right off the get-go. And you kind of mentioned it in the lead up, which is that, it's this generative AI thing is only a few months old, really, in the minds of the public for the most part, in the retail community. So what is generative AI, for everyone? Define it for us, and how does it differ from those other garden variety AI spaces that you mentioned in the outset?
Yeah, I love the term garden variety AI, by the way. So we'll touch on that in a second. But what's new about generative AI is it's nice because it's actually in the name. So generative AI, it's enabling us to quickly generate new content based on whatever the input or prompt that we're putting into the model. So inputs can be everything from text or images, sounds, animations, 3D models, sort of you name it. We can input a lot of different types of data into these models. And then what that model is going to do is it's going to use the neural network to identify some patterns and structures within that data, within that prompt, and it's going to come up with new and original content. So it's generative,
right?
Right.
That's cool though. That's something I never closed that loop until you just said that. That makes sense.
Exactly. I think so many people are looking for something that's much more sophisticated than that, but really we named this one well. And so you have to think of, okay, so what is, generative use cases? And that's where I think, today we're seeing lots of things like text generation, summarization, chatbots are a big hot topic. And that can then span into things like image generation or video generation. which are all horizontal use cases being used by everyone. We all can understand them in our personal lives and our business lives.
Amanda, how can we expect generative AI to really impact the retail industry? Most of our audience is in the industry. How do you kind of see that impact happening?
Yeah, what I love about this question is it's almost impossible to answer the long term. It's going to be transformative. Everything we do will be transformed by this. So I'd say, we are scratching the top of a very deep iceberg that has so many possibilities for where this could go in the retail space. I think if we look at it generally, what retailers are going to look to generative AI for is how they can use it to automate tasks, to add efficiency, increase their productivity, and drive that customer experience. Generative AI is great at replacing some of the manual, tedious tasks that we as humans aren't necessarily great at. We are much better at the higher level of thinking. Let generative AI take a lot of those so more base level tasks, automate them, and then you as a human can go in and audit what it's produced. So let's start with some examples of where we're using it today, and maybe that will be another indication of where this could go. Yeah. Shopify, I think, is a great example. We all know this e-commerce platform, lots of merchants putting their products there. And in order to do that, you have to create something as simple as product descriptions. And these can be, tedious. They're important. They're important for search. They're important for marketing. But it's sometimes difficult to come up with hundreds or thousands of these, depending on how many SKUs that you as a merchant have. And so Shopify created something called Shopify Magic, which is going to automate those product descriptions. Right.
And that's based off of images, or how is it kind of taking that information in?
So you can prompt it with text, right? So you can say, create me a product description for a bag. I want the description to be informative, but sophisticated, or I want it to be fun and edgy, or I want it to appeal to users, you can tell I'm in the technology space.
Yeah.
Customers.
Yes.
To customers who, are in the 20 to 40 demographic or something like that, right? So you can prompt it with a number of different things, and it's going to give you a response. And then if you're not comfortable with the first one, you can regenerate it, or you can add additional information, keywords, things like that. So I think that's a really cool way to look at generative AI.
And you can also style it, right? For tone, right? Like using the Seinfeld example, which we're a big fan of using Seinfeld references on this show. Like you could do the Jay Peterman version of that handbag if you wanted to, and it would create it for you. Or you could do like a bargain basement, like just get it done type of description as well, right, Amanda?
Exactly. And I think that's what's so cool is you could actually say, here's one of my existing product descriptions that I agonized over for hours. Create something like this, and it can actually understand what you've given it and use that as a base for what it's going to create, not just its underlying model. It also uses that what we call a prompt.
What are some of the other use cases that are out there?
So I think another big use case is going to be customer service. We all, as retailers, want to make sure that we're providing the best possible experience for our customers, but it's hard, especially in this e-commerce, this digital world. We're getting calls, texts, tweets, emails, whatever, with questions and concerns and things like that. So Unilever, as an example, is looking at this challenge, and they're using generative AI to sort through all of the customer service requests they get, and they're filtering out spam and bots and sort of anything that doesn't need to be addressed by customer service. And then not only do they do that, they then highlight those that are actual customer concerns or questions, present that to the customer service agent with suggested remediation. Here are some things you might want to help them with. Here are some ways that you can answer for them, recommended solutions, things like that. So if you think like that's a multi-step generative AI, identify the right use cases, highlight those to the user and provide that customer service agent So maybe it's day one and they have no idea what they're doing. Generative AI is going to help that customer service agent be productive right out of the gate.
Got it. So I'm curious too, Amanda. One focus and I've had this year, particularly in 2023, is highlighting technologies that can impact the frontline worker as well and improve their lives day to day. Are you seeing anything? Because it's when you talk about AI, sometimes it's hard to understand how that could benefit them. Are you seeing anything in that space that, is noteworthy in that arena?
Yeah, I think, the experience of the employees, of the assistants, the frontline workers, as you called them, that is so important. And AI is just as beneficial there. So a great example is Sam's Club. So they've built a chatbot that can be used by their employees to ask questions about, hey, where are these items located? A customer is looking for this type of thing. Can you recommend products in this area? You can imagine if you're the front line, and again, maybe you're day one and you don't have all the answers, generative AI can actually supply those to those frontline workers and help automate their tasks. So I think that's there's a lot of fear and concern about jobs changing and maybe being lost. Think of generative AI as an assistant, an agent, something to augment your work, make it easier, make you more efficient, make you in a position to do the more valuable work while it takes sort of the heavy lifting on the manual tasks.
Well, and Amanda, there's something with like the Ask Sam, I think they call it at Sam's Club, inputs for that then predictive AI is able to take as well. Is that right? Like, just trying to help kind of constantly improve what are the inputs we're getting here from the generative AI interactions and then create like some sort of guides. Is that something that you're seeing too, or how are you seeing kind of the predictive AI be applied to these generative AI interactions?
Yeah, I think so. When you're saying predictive AI, it's really about getting the right answers there. So what we can do is use something called reinforcement learning from humans to actually augment responses. So if somebody says, "Hey, this was a great response," it's going to be more likely to give that response in the future. So it's a little bit combining those ideas, but we can, as humans, say, yes, this was good, or no, this wasn't exactly what I was looking for. And I think that continually makes the models better so that they can be more valuable in the future.
And I think that's really interesting as we continue to, this AI has only been around in this sort of widely used consumer facing application for, 6 or 7 months now. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of data we do start to collect and how the employee experience gets to be improved based on, what we're learning from these interactions, how we're able to refine processes, to prioritize different things, and really just be able to, for the first time, kind of collect all and analyze all this information that we haven't been able to as humans in the past.
Yeah. I think what's really cool about this specific aspect of generative AI is it's a conversation. It doesn't have to be I asked a question, it didn't know the answer. You can ask it in a different way. You can give it different guidelines, and the ability to actually interact and improve that AI, as opposed to, I think typically AI has been seen, more as a, like a slightly more intelligent phone tree, still annoying, but not quite, but better than some of the alternatives. This is actually a conversation. You could actually talk to these things, improve upon them, and then again, provide that feedback, create that loop, so that this isn't, AI is taking over. This is giving us a tool to, sort through that kind of data. The data exists somewhere. We're now just putting a front end on it so that we can ask questions and queries of that data.
Yeah, and that's what's really interesting to me too. And what you said, like, we hear all the time, it's, the technology's not going to replace the worker. And, sometimes we're like, yes, no, but, in this case, from my recent and nascent experience with it, and Anne's too, is it really is kind of an augmentation tool. Like, it's almost like a performance enhancing drug for the worker in a lot of ways. It's like steroids. I mean, you can just do so much more and be so much more productive. But from my experience, there's also a human touch to it to get the right prompts and understand how it works. And you can get to all those ideas that you weren't able to get to before. So my question on that front then is, as retailers are thinking about engaging with generative AI, what should they do to capture the most value from it?
When it comes to generative AI, there's a number of different ways we can engage. The most basic and easiest, and probably the one that we've all been doing since it burst onto the scene, is the consumption model. This is using services that exist online. ChatGPT is going to be the hottest name in the market. Everyone's heard of it. Hopefully everyone's tried it. And they're experimenting with what it can do. These types of services, and there's many of them, obviously a lot of open source ones like DALL-E, obviously OpenAI with ChatGPT, but there's some closed source ones as well that can be purchased. These are perfect for the general purpose use cases, things like basic chatbots. ChatGPT understands English really well, and actually a number of other languages are coming on board. So as you're trying to get into different markets and different regions, you can still use that same tool. You don't need to train your own model to understand that. You can leverage the tools that exist. So I think that's the first approach, is consumption, understanding where are the areas where those types of tools make sense. And I think some of the best advice I've heard is use it like a contractor. Give it only the information that you would give somebody outside your company who you were working with. And that's a great rule of thumb there. The next one that we're seeing pretty heavily in the retail space is being able to purchase solutions from application vendors and things like that. And these are a little bit more customized, a little bit more tuned to the retail space. And generally, not always, but generally have options for retailers to tune those models with their own data. So these application providers will work with you, will tune things, like your customer service responses, like your manuals, like your SKUs, whatever that data source that you want to tune that model with. These guys will help you with that. So I think purchasing is the next way to engage. And then the final way is going to be important for certain companies and brands. And that's when you want to look at what do I need to build myself? And here we're looking at, what is the most valuable data you as your organization has. And it may be things like your customer data and being able to build hyper-personalized experiences. That's not necessarily something you'd want to trust to an outside source, and you'd want to build that internally. It might be things like your knowledge base. Maybe you have a lot of expertise in whatever area you're in, and you want to build a chatbot that relates to that. So there are different reasons why somebody would want to build themselves, but I think that's the third way to really engage with generative AI. And it's all just going to depend on your use case.
Tell me a little bit about some of I know it's early. It's hard to give a lot of success stories yet, but do you have a few examples that you've seen with some of the retailers that you've worked with or observed of, approaches where they're finding some of these earlier successes? They're finding efficiencies early on just by applying the generative AI in the ways that you just went through.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about some of the examples where we're seeing it, and I think there's lots more. I think one great example is in the startup space for these retailers. So there's a cool software startup called Vernique. And they've built an AI application called the Quinn Shopping AI. And think of this as your, everyone wants a shopping assistant. Whether you've seen it in the TV shows or in movies, everyone wants that assistant who's going to help them find the right items near them that fit all of their requirements and make recommendations that maybe they'd never even thought of. And that's exactly what this application does. So it's helping shoppers make better, faster decisions. And then you can imagine as a retailer, that's great for you because you're giving your shoppers, your customers that great experience. And you're hopefully encouraging them to buy more products or products that they maybe wouldn't have considered because they were just buying what they were used to.
So Amanda, how do you spell that? Because I know Anne's already thinking about trying that out. So how do you spell Vernique?
Vernique, Verneek. Okay. The application is called the Quinn Shopping AI. So again, just a really cool, example of how this AI assistant, and again, going back to that augmentation, for the shopper can help improve, the retail experience overall.
Right. I love the concierge being able to really, I mean, that's what I'm really excited about, to be able to see how this starts to kind of take shape and be able to ask those questions. Like, I like this shirt, but it's, it's a little higher budget than I had in mind for this. Like, what are some other examples that you can share with me for, that I could still get the look, but, and usually that's with a person. And I love it because it's kind of an awkward question to ask sometimes too. So it's like, you can really bare your soul to this AI.
Exactly. And I think that's a great point, is that we are more comfortable, for a lot of us, especially as we're looking at the next generation that's coming in, talking to computers, talking to machines.
Right.
We feel we can share more information. We can be a little bit more open. We're not worried about the machine judging us, because that's the great thing about AI, is it really doesn't. And so as AI is trained to become more empathetic, it can get even better at those conversations. But again, right now, it's just providing that great assistant. And then when you find what you need, you can go into the store and talk to the real human and feel educated and informed about your decisions, so that you don't find yourself embarrassed or whatever else in that conversation.
So, man, I want to push you a little bit too, because I think part of the issue in trying to understand this on the retailer side, the retailer executive side, is everyone always leans towards the consumer use case that we can always understand, right? And the shopping use case, like you just described, that Vernique's doing, is one that's pretty easy for us to put our heads around mentally. But like, what's another example of something that's actually maybe from an operational perspective, outside of the marketing examples that we hear a lot about, like, oh, you can write more social media content and that kind of stuff. What's an hardcore example that outlines what generative AI can do from an operational standpoint?
That's a great question, because yes, we talk a lot about, the consumers and the customer facing once the product's built, but building products, creating products, and creating new and unique products is a challenge. They say there's nothing new on this planet. And so as a designer, and even as an engineer, it's difficult to come up with those. So in the retail space, in the fashion space specifically, there's another startup called Fashable that I think is pretty cool. They're using a generative AI to help create virtual clothing designs. So they can, come up with a number of different ideas on how to create a, sleek but comfortable and, environmentally friendly jacket that can be worn in these climates and these temperatures, that kind of thing. And it can come up with some models, come up with the designs that are, possible. And then the designers can start from that. So it doesn't replace the designer. It's not like these clothes are going straight to the manufacturer, but it's saying, hey, based on what you've told me your requirements are, here are some options. And so I think for designers, for some design processes, is called creating scrap. This is a great tool to be able to come up with some new, innovative, exciting ideas that maybe you wouldn't have thought of, because as humans, we're trained on what we know.
And Amanda, are they pulling inputs too from some of the interactions with consumers then to help inform those designs then too? I mean, I'm thinking about days of old where it was like Shein has people voting on mock-ups.
Oh, right.
Like, are they able to? Yeah. Last year, December. But like, just like how it required like creating this form, having people like voted up or down. But now, I mean, are they able to take that conversation about like, I wanted something like this, but more budget friendly, to kind of take those inputs and select what products they're going to create?
I think they absolutely could. So that might be an expansion of what they do today. But yes, you could certainly say, hey, these designs. So let's take it a different way.
Yeah.
Fashable uses your own data to help recommend designs, because obviously you're going to have a brand, you're going to have a style, you're going to have different things that you want the model to be trained on what you create.
Yeah.
So you could certainly find ways to say, hey, this was really popular. What are other ideas that relate to this type of thing? And the AI itself may identify things that a human wouldn't necessarily think, oh, that was the reason that was so popular. It was the color, it was the style. Now it's not trained on everything. So it's not going to have the context of potentially social media and, the world events or, fashionistas and what's going on out there. You're going to have to tell it that information. But yeah, I think it absolutely could use data that way. And then in the future, here's like a, potential idea of you could actually, before you ever produce a piece of clothing, and actually there's plenty of retailers that do this today, but you could put up the design, you could put up a photorealistic image that looks like the product
on
has
an
been
AI
created.
model. Yeah.
That looks like it's been created, put it on your website, and as people want to buy it, you create it. And you could imagine then it's entirely personalized, it's entirely based on that the input from the customer.
But getting back to that example in your question, and the whole steroids thing, like you can imagine a designer sitting there be like, oh, I like this design, but I'm worried it's a little too expensive for my customer. Give me 5 options with different materials are used that bring the cost down. And then I can see exactly which of those I want to pick. Instead of having to design those 5 myself, when I am the original creator of the design that's generating that conversation. So that's the augmentation here that's so cool and so powerful. But Amanda, okay, so as we close it out, I'm curious too, like you talked about all the different approaches retailers can take. You talked about the consumption model, the purchase model, the custom build model. How, if I'm a retailer, am I sorting through all that? How do I decide which one's right for me? Is it mutually exclusive? Like what challenges should I be on the lookout for as well as I'm going through that thought process as an executive across the organization?
So I think the biggest fear and the biggest challenge is going to be sort of the paralysis by analysis. These are not mutually exclusive. Get started, start experimenting, build the expertise within your company to start learning. And for whoever's listening on this podcast, you're already taking the first step into, what is generative AI and starting to think about what it could do for your business. But this will be a competitive advantage. It will be a game changer. It's transformative. So waiting until you're at the final stage and everything's finalized is you're waiting too long. So I think that's first. So build up that expertise and start learning now. I think the other things that you're going to want to look for are, understanding your data. What makes you as a retailer, as a company unique, and how best to leverage that data. As I said, there's lots of use cases where, you can use the general purpose tools that are out there. You can use them as AI assistants in your day-to-day life, in your business, that might suit for a lot of the use cases you're looking at. But if you've got really valuable or really domain-specific data within your company, and most companies do, think about how could you turn that into a value add either to your employees, to your customers, or to your operations processes. Once you do that, you can then take the next step to say, okay, do I have the expertise in-house? Do I have the tools and skills? And am I willing to invest in the infrastructure to go build this myself? Or do I need to see if there's somebody out there on the market who's already built this and I can work with them and engage with them? So I think those are some of the biggest questions to ask. And then the other piece that I want to touch on is data privacy, data licensing. All of these are big focuses and concerns for AI. So making sure that, again, you have the expertise in-house to understand that and that you're using your data wisely is going to be, a key area to touch on. And that's going to vary for every single different customer.
Yeah, there's a big aha in what you just said for me. And I never thought about this until Amanda just said it, is like, if we get back to the augmentation side, the steroid thing again, like, yes, as a retailer, understand what data you have available in terms of what you do best day after day after day, and then just supercharge that. That's the place to start, because that's going to probably bring you the most value, because you're just going to do for the market what you do best in a much more powerful way, a much more bigger way, much more rapid way, much more efficient way. That's cool. I never thought about that.
Yeah, be unique, be you. Don't change who you are as a company, as a process. Use this tool to augment what you already do best, I think is exactly right.
Well, and Amanda, to do what you're talking about as a retailer requires a lot of compute power. How is NVIDIA kind of helping provide the tools and the resources for retailers to do what you're just talking about, to really expand on what they're really good at, to be able to get the most out of, their unique offering to the industry?
Absolutely. NVIDIA, we've been in this space, as I said, for years. It blew up in the public eye, but we've been doing research, we've been doing development, and we've certainly building sort of the tools and capabilities. So the first thing that we're doing is we're supercharging the ecosystem, whether that's, the OpenAIs, Google, Bards, open source of the world. We are actively engaged in there and helping them build their models. So that we've done without you ever even asking. The retail ecosystem and the ISVs in that, we have a whole program called NVIDIA Inception, where we actually work with these application builders. We help them with their code. We help them use the tools that we have, and then we help market them out into the space so that you're able to find great, high quality generative AI applications that are out there on the market that solve retail specific needs. So we talked about a couple of them there today, but we've got many more that are in our ecosystem. And then from the customization side, this is an area where we're building out a whole tool set. So things to help you train and customize models at scale. This is going to be one of the biggest areas of growth for the AI space and for AI developers and researchers, is how do we build and customize generative AI models? We expect there will be thousands out there, hundreds, maybe even per company. So this is going to be a big area. And so we're providing the tools for that. Another thing that we're working on is providing guardrails. Generative AI is one of those areas where we hear a lot about hallucinations, is what we call it, or when the generative AI produces an answer that is totally out of left field. You have no idea where it comes from, and it's probably not right. As a retailer, you want to protect yourself against that. So we're adding guardrails that would allow you to tune a model to, one, only answer questions on your topics, put safety guardrails in there to make sure that it's providing appropriate information, that it's not just going off on its own and surfacing internet information that it's found on the internet. And then, of course, security guardrails, making sure that the model is being connected to only through safe third-party external applications, those types of things. So tools to help you build, tools to help you safeguard, and then tools to help you scale. So
it is a huge part of this too. And I'm so glad that you mentioned this, Amanda, because I do think that's a hard thing for a lot of us to understand right now too, as we're applying generative AI to our businesses. Like, what are those guardrails? How do we make sure that we are honoring, the privacy of our consumers, that we're honoring the intellectual property of people, that the data that we're pulling from? Any other things you'd throw in there as like a watch out for retailers listening?
Yeah, I think, and then the other thing, yes, exactly. The other thing we'll provide is we can show you how other people are doing this. We can share with you examples. We can share with you, how-tos. We produce a lot of information on NVIDIA.com. And for those who are in the active building side of this, we actually have an entire technical blog that goes into deep details about how to customize, which models to choose, which techniques are going to be best to achieve what you're trying to do. So we've touched along, as you said, a lot of the questions that everyone's afraid to ask. What are we doing with this? How are we doing it? If you really want to get into the details, they're all on NVIDIA.com. So please check that out, subscribe, and we'll continue to share information as we're coming out with it.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll try to get some of those resources in our podcast description too, because man, this has been a fascinating conversation. Like, this time has blown by, and I looked down at the clock. I'm like, oh my God, we've been going at a good clip. It's just really interesting subject matter.
Yeah, it helps to, I think, have experts like you too, Amanda, who are able to, just give us an understanding and keep giving us examples. I mean, I think that's really the best thing about this being such a big topic in the industry right now, is you cannot have enough examples of how people are using this. And I think, NVIDIA clearly a big part of the success of these retailers applying this technology. So I'm so thankful that you were able to share more of those with us on the show today.
Yeah, I mean, it's changing so rapidly. It's growing so fast. As I mentioned, all the things we're talking about today, these are just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
So, I'm actually, just as excited, even though, it feels like we're at the forefront of this, I can't wait to see what comes next. And I think that's going to be the key. Get started, start investing, start doing your own learning, no matter what your role is. You don't have to be an AI developer to start learning how this can be used today. Experiment with the tools that are freely available, and then figure out where it makes sense to implement.
Yeah, that's a great point to close on too. And I have no idea, how many people are listening to this and at what level, but I think about this back in my day when I was starting out at the Gap, and whoever knew how to use Excel, man, they just had a leg up on everybody else in that organization. It's going to be the same thing with ChatGPT. It really is. That is going to be how this works. And my big takeaways from the conversation, just to close it out, and then we'll give thanks to Amanda, is the new part, the definition around generative AI being about creating new things. That's really seminal to me in my head. And then the other point is using it to do what you do best better. Those are my big takeaways from this conversation, that before sitting down with you today, Amanda, I know I didn't know. I don't want to speak for Ann, but I know I didn't know. So yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for making time for us. If people want to get in touch with you, pick your brain and get in touch with NVIDIA, leverage their expertise like you described, what's the best way for them to do that?
We actually have a whole team who focuses on retail. So if you reach out to us at retail@nvidia.com, hopefully pretty easy to remember, you'll get in contact with us, and they can put you in contact with me if you're interested in specifically learning about generative AI and the work we're doing, but also all the work that we do in the retail space. There's a whole team of experts there. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. Well, again, that's been Amanda Saunders of NVIDIA. Thanks again for sitting down with us. And in behalf of all of us here at OmniTalk, as always, and take us out.
Be careful out there.